So welcome everybody. My name is Robin Lawley, and I'm the leader of the Breathing Arts Group. And we have a creative workshop every month. And this month we're very pleased to welcome Tom, and looking forward so much to this. And I'd just like to introduce the other people on our team. And so I'm going to pass it over to Tanya. You are muted, so please unmute yourself, and I will mute myself.
Thank you, Robin. Hi, everyone. My name is Tanya Gauriran. Welcome. So glad that you're here today. I am one of the organizers of these creative workshops. And we are passionate about breath and art, whatever creative expression. So we're always looking for members or people who want to facilitate. So if you're interested, please reach out to us. It'd be great. But thanks for being here. Please mute yourself throughout the session. If you have any questions, put them in the chat. That would be great. And we can address them that way. So enjoy today. We're thrilled to have Tom. He's an expert facilitator, so we're very happy to have him here. Thanks, Tom.
Well, thank you. That's praise indeed, Tanya. And thank you for inviting me to come.
I'm sorry, Tom.
We
have one more person. We have Orlando.
Oh, I'm sorry. Right. Got you.
We can't hear you, Orlando.
How about now? Oh, perfect. Hello. Welcome, everyone. I'll be more mainly on behind the scenes, helping with the tech. So if anyone has any issues throughout the session, feel free to chat with me in the Zoom chat, and I'll be able to help you out as best I can. But I'm also part of the Breathing Arts team, helping out with the social media and helping out with bringing all this wonderful stuff happening every month. I'll definitely enjoy your session today.
Thank you, Orlando. And yeah, thank you to Tanya and Robin as well for inviting me to come and speak to all you guys. I really appreciate the opportunity. I've been aware of the IBF, obviously, since getting into breathwork. So I'm very honored to be a part of IBF Arts here and to hopefully give you an interesting and nice experience. This is a very laid back workshop. We're going to be talking about breathing and creativity, and in particular, the connections between breathing and conscious awareness and creativity. And I'm going to take you on a little journey, and we're going to look at 3 reasons why breath is central to pretty much every major spiritual tradition around meditation. We're going to explore 2 ways of meditating with a pencil. So you do need a pen and paper or a pencil to hand, and don't worry, because if you're someone who's a bit, I like the arts, but I'm a musician, we're not going to be drawing anything from life. I'm not going to be asking anyone to show their work. We're just going to be scribbling some lines down. And then the 3, 2, 1. So three reasons breath is central to every major tradition in meditation, 2 ways of meditating with a pencil, and 1 way of instantly becoming more creative. So hopefully that's appealing to all you creatives out there. It's really nice just to know who I'm talking to. So if you guys wouldn't mind just letting me know in the chat where you're coming from. So I think 2 people have done it already because they're so used to these Zoom situations. So hello to Jermaine from Amsterdam. Hello to David from London. If you guys just wouldn't mind letting me know where you're from, and perhaps letting me know in the chat what kind of creativity are you most interested in. Is there an outlet that you have? Because it might help me to make this more relevant for you. So we've got people from Denmark, Oregon, so all the way on the west coast of America, Heike from Germany. Amazing. Okay, so I'm just going to get you guys to do a little experiment. And if you've come to any of my sessions before, I apologize for making you do this again, because you know that I do this at the beginning of every single session I do. So what I'm going to invite you to do is a little experiment you can do on yourself. And that is just to make a fist. So just using your dominant hand, whichever hand you write with or you draw with, and just begin to make a fist. And then squeeze that fist quite tight. So squeeze it almost like you're really squeezing all the juice out of a lemon. So really squeezing that lemon, and just notice what's happened to your breathing now. So what's going on with your breathing right now? And you can let go of that fist and give it a shake out the tension. What happened to your breathing? Let me know in the chat what changed. Did anything change in your breathing? Breathing stopped. Thank you, Ben. Yeah. Did anyone else have the same experience as Ben? Stopped. Yeah, Kristen. Forgot to breathe, says Carolyn. Brilliant way of describing it. I don't think I've heard that one before. Yeah, so this is a really simple way of demonstrating the relationship between breathing and tension. So the more tension we have in the body, even if it's deliberate tension that we're creating ourselves, the less we breathe, the more we suppress our breath, or the more we rapidly and shallowly breathe. But the really good news is it's a two-way street, as we're going to discover towards the end of this session. It's a two-way street. So by breathing, by changing our breathing, we can change the amount of tension in the body. We can have less tension in the body when we start to breathe slowly, fluidly, deeply, but also not taking in too much air. And we'll have an experience of that at the end. And when we release that tension in the body, in a very real way, energy flows in the body more easily. Not just air and oxygen, but the very feelings of energy themselves. And we'll get to that and how that relates to intuition. But for now, I wanted to just introduce the history of ideas. This session is called Creative Wellbeing. And I want to just get into the idea of inspiration itself. And we're going to go back through the history of ideas now to the ancient Greeks. So I'd just like you to write in the chat something that comes to mind for you when I say ancient Greece. So what immediately just pops into your mind? What words or images? What does ancient Greek culture look like? So rituals, says Tanya. What else have we got? Architecture, yes, as Jermaine, the columns, the arts. Very true, Marlene, all kinds of art. So music, the many gods. So yeah, huge amount of gods in their pantheon. Parthenon, yes, very iconic. Any more? Maybe the myths as well. Very present cultural ideas that we still have today, like pretty much the word philosophy is Greek. So that just gives you an insight into how much of our ideas about philosophy and how we interpret the world, and even how we interpret the world through philosophy, comes from ancient Greece. Ideas like democracy, even Sparta as an idea. It started as a kind of an idea for a perfect society. So really, really creative culture. But they had a very, very different idea about how we have our ideas. So somebody's mentioned mythology, and Tanya said goddesses there, and I'm going to talk about some goddesses now. Their idea for how we actually have our creative ideas is they had these gods in their pantheon called muses, and there was different muses for each type of art. And their idea about how they had ideas was that the muses would actually blow the idea into the artist or the sculptor or the poet or the playwright. And it's a bit like a helpful image for that is the idea of embers. So you have embers and you blow on them and they turn into a flame. So this idea that something outside of ourselves is helping us to have the idea. And that actually really rings true to our concept, or rather our experience, I should say, of having ideas. If you think of the last time you solved a creative problem, now I know I'm probably talking to an audience who do that all the time, but for most people that happens when we're at our most relaxed. It's just as we're drifting off to bed, we have the idea and, oh my God, I have to get a pen, or I forget it. And then I think, I'm sure I had an idea when I wake up the next day. Sure I had an idea and I've forgotten what it was. Or we have them in the shower. So it's very, very common to have a creative insight in the shower or in the bath or on a nice long country walk, right? And these are all times where we're super relaxed. And I just want to talk about this concept because what we're really talking about here is inspiration. And that word comes from the Greek inspirare, which is literally translates as breathing into. Or rather, that's a Latin word, but it's based on this Greek idea. So inspirare, to breathe into. So it's this idea that we're having our ideas breathed into us by the gods gives us our word for inspiration. And what's really helpful about that is it really rings true to the fact that when we're trying to have creative ideas, one of the most helpful things is actually to get out of our own way. And I'm someone who has to be creative for my job. being a writer, and I'm going to show you some of the things I've put together in a moment. But I really got fascinated by this concept that there's a possibility we can actually engineer a state in the body and a state in the mind that is actually conducive to ideas happening for us and to us rather than us having to do them. So I used to be a creative writer and graphic designer for big health companies. And I had to be creative to a deadline. So I had to, by 5 o'clock, Tom, you have to have had 5 ideas, which, as we know, as creative people on this call, can be really challenging. And so the older I got and the more I got into this, I realized I need to be working on not just trying to solve ideas, but creating the kind of space in which ideas can happen. And so I'm just going to take you through some of my work and how I got into the world of breathing. And so originally I was doing logo design and creating company names. And you can see the kind of ideas that I like are ones where there's a bit of a wink and a smile. So whether it's this is a telecoms company and you hide a speech bubble in the letter A, or eyelash angels, and these could be eyelashes or wings. This is for an eyelash makeover company. Just combining anything so that it can be 2 things. So work-life balance. This is a company that teaches yoga in offices. So very much a play on words there. And I just love the idea of bringing 2 ideas together. And I ended up having a second career as a writer. So my first book was called The Coloring Book for Goths, the world's most depressing book. And this was a book that is designed to be colored entirely in black. So all other coloring books out there at the time, this is going back like 5, 6, maybe even 7 years that I made this book. You may even remember it, you're all creative types and probably a bunch of hippies. So you probably were the same as me. Everyone was buying you coloring books for mindfulness and coloring books for calm every Christmas and birthday. And this was a kind of we say in England, a Mickey take of that. So a satire of that craze. And the idea was that instead of being there to make you mindful and calm, this would be the opposite. So it's there to make you macabre, to instill a feeling of aloof cynicism is how I described it in the book. And so each page you're invited to color in the image in black, making the page fully black. So by the time you finish the book, every page would be completely black. So you have a power cut looking up at the night sky, but in a heavily polluted city. So you're coloring out the stars. Very depressing. Yin and yin. So just coloring in the yang. Black hole, a panda in witness protection disguised as a black bear. So yeah, you get the idea. A lot of kind of visual puns with the color black. And the publisher invited me to come back and write another book for their teenage emo market, because the book didn't do terribly well in England, but it did really well in America, because you guys have a lot more emo teens and they seem to buy the book. And so the publisher said, would you mind trying to get us into that market? And I said, okay. And I wrote this book, which is called The Breakup Journal, Break Up Without the Breakdown. And this is essentially an adult activity book. So it also invites creativity. So there's journaling, you journal your side of the story, their side of the story, and it's broken up into the phases that you go through when you're getting over a romantic pain. So you're making charts of the happiness in the relationship over time versus the sexiness in relationship over time, making Venn diagrams of who keeps what friends, and essentially loads of different invitations to be creative and silly in the book. And it was intended to be fun, to be stupid and silly and fun. But I actually got quite a few emails from people who said it had been really helpful, because essentially what you're doing is reframing in a tongue-in-cheek way your experience. And then there's a happy ending to these kind of miserable books with the Love Scrapbook. So this is a follow-up to the Breakup Journal. And this is a book that invites you to, again, draw inside the pages, color in inside the pages, and design them matching tattoos for you and your partner. So the idea behind this book is you actually fill it in for your partner and give it to them as a gift. So it absorbs all of your in-jokes that you have in your relationship. So collaging with the gig tickets of cinema, things you've been on and dates you've been on and all this kind of stuff. And if you fold over these little lines on each page, I don't know if you'll be able to see those on Zoom, but you might be able to see the black ones there. There are these guides on each page, and if you folded those over, the book, hang on a second, I just got to share my sound for this to work. 1 second. You'd think I knew how to use Zoom after 3 years of working on it. Okay, so if you folded all of those lines over, I've just gone ahead and done it without sound again. Give me 1 second. You can see where this is going though. Share sound, there we go. So if you fold all those lines over, the book actually becomes an origami love heart. There you go. So you're kind of seeing some themes here. You might have spotted some themes developing in my work, some very obvious ones in these 3 books that are common. All of the books invite you to ruin the book. Essentially, they invite you to be creative, to be irreverent, and to get involved with the book. The book is an experience that you're invited into. So there's invited interaction. They're also inviting creativity in some way from the reader, reader's the wrong word, from the participant in the book. And they're also all somehow relating to emotional health or emotional expression. So the Coloring Book for Goths is inviting you to instill the emotion of melancholy. The Breakup Journal is helping you to overcome the emotions involved in a breakup. And the Love Scrapbook is there to help you express the emotion of love. And at the time, I was also just becoming really interested in meditation. And I put those themes together of interactivity and emotional health into a book called Draw Breath, which is how I basically entered the world of breathing. So the concept behind this book is something we're going to talk about now. So I'll show you what's inside the book in just a second. But first, I want to talk about our 3 reasons why the breath is central to every major spiritual tradition around breathing. So what is the connection? What's the connection between breathing and meditation? Why do we use it in meditation? And what I'm going to invite you to do is just give me some answers in the chat. Why do you think we use breathing in meditation? What is the big deal with breathing? And I'm sure we'll get some of these 3 answers straight off the bat from you guys. Oh, for some reason I can't see the chat now. I can't scroll in the chat. Oh, there we go. Tanya's saying it activates the parasympathetic nervous system. Ben saying it gives us a focal point, like a home base. All of these are brilliant. To be present in the moment, relaxing, focus of attention. So there's at least 3 answers there that are what I'm going to say first, and the others are what I'm going to say last. This is really good. So yeah, I'm going to go with these first ones: to be present in the moment, to be a focus of attention, and to be our focal point. That's pretty much where I was going first. So it's this idea that breathing is actually a way of us training our attention. And what we're going to do is actually play a little game. So this is the first time you're going to need your pen and paper. And what I'm going to invite you to do is to draw 2 lines down your page to make 3 columns. Doesn't have to be very neat. And just so I've got a gauge of where people are at, if you give me a thumbs up as soon as you've done it, that really helps. Okay, Tanya's the top of the class there. Okay, cool. I think most people are there. So what we're going to do next is draw 7 dots down each column. And these dots, as you go across the columns, are going to be in line with each other. So I'm just going to share my screen so you can see how this looks in the end, rather than watching my rather untidy attempt at it. So that's how it's going to look in the end. So what you're going to do is write at the bottom of each column past in the first column, present and future, and you just add an extra little dot in the middle column at the bottom. Okay, so you end up with something that looks roughly like this. So take your time getting to that point and give me a thumbs up if you've completed that. Okay, good. Okay, fantastic. So I'm going to use a different color now, and you don't have to. It's just so that you can see what I'm doing, so that you guys can see what I'm doing. And what we're going to do is essentially play a game with our attention. And the goal of the game is we can just start just with some very mindful awareness of the sensations of air coming in and out through the nose. So we could just all do this together. So eyes closed, focusing on the sensations in the nose. And our goal is to keep our attention there. And inevitably your attention will wander. And when it does, and it wanders into thought, what I'd like you to do is just acknowledge whatever thought is here and ask yourself, is this a thought about the past or the future? Because the sensations in the nose are always in the present. So Josephine mentioned that in the chat, to be present in the moment. That's why we focus on the breath, because the sensations of the breath are always in the present moment. So we can't be aware of sensations from 2 minutes ago. That's always a memory, not a sensation. So if we're aware of our sensations of our breath, by definition, we're living in the present moment. And that's the game we're going to play now. So what I'd like you to do is just take your pen, and I'll demonstrate what we're going to do. Place it on that starting dot, that first dot in the present column. And then become aware of the sensations in your nose. Okay, now almost immediately my mind is going over something I just said. Thinking, did I explain that very well? Did I give them enough time? So that's all thoughts about the past. And that's my brain trying to help me by giving me thoughts about the past and trying to make sure everything went okay in the talk. So it's trying to help me by drawing my attention away from the present moment into the past. So what I'm doing with my pencil is taking it away from the present moment into the past. And then I'm just going to come straight back to the present, start again, noticing sensations in my nose. Okay, and my next thought is now, what if I don't think of anything? This is going to be rubbish. No, I'm just going to be here forever and it's not going to work. So that's a thought about the future. I'm worrying about the future and this example not working. So I take my pen over to the future, to this point in time here in the future, and then back to the present moment. And you can see what we're ending up with is a kind of map of where my attention's going. So that's what we're going to do. So we're just going to close our eyes. I'm going to give you a couple minutes. You don't have to complete it, especially if you're very experienced with meditation. You might not get to the end. You might be so focused on those and absorbed in those feelings in the nose. So we're just going to give you a few minutes and close the eyes, paying attention to the nose with the pen on the starting dot. And I'll be doing it with you. So just noticing the coolness of the air coming in and the warmth of the air leaving the nose. Okay, and I'm just going to stop you there. You can always have another go at this later, just so we can fit more in today. But what you end up with, as you can see, my mind's very busy right now. And I kept being drawn into thoughts about the future. Very, very clear dynamic here for me at the moment. That's because I've got quite a big workload on at the moment. So I'm thinking, oh, I've got to do that course tomorrow. Am I going to be in the... So that's my mind wearing away. And the key point of what I'm trying to communicate here is that most people, when they first come to meditation, they think it's about having a completely clear or a completely blank mind. And it absolutely isn't. What we're doing in meditation is having a focus point in the present, in our sensations, in our body. And noticing, this is the most important bit of it, is noticing when the mind has wandered and creating the reflex of coming back to the sensation, coming back to the present moment. This is the most important part of mindfulness meditation or Vipassana meditation. Because when we do that, what happens is we end up building a kind of meta-awareness of our thoughts. So our thoughts, instead of being something we're completely absorbed in, are something we can have perspective on because we keep noticing that we're having them. So it builds that reflex of consciousness of thought and the reflex of coming back into the body. And we're going to talk more at the end about the importance of being in the body. And in terms of what that means for creativity is, if you think about the fact that creativity, all of those concepts that I've shown you, from the logos to the books, all they are is two different pre-existing ideas mashed together. That's the really simple explanation of what creativity is. It's two pre-existing concepts, and all of your most favorite ideas that you've ever seen. Somebody was probably doing a bad impression of somebody else, whether it is an artist or a musician that we think is completely amazing and unique. They have their own inspirations. It's a very achievable goal to be creative, and the way of doing it is to mash together two ideas. So that the coloring book for goths is just putting together the idea of goth culture, loving the color black, with the pre-existing idea of coloring books. The idea behind the breakup journal was just putting together children's activity books with cognitive behavioral therapy, essentially. And with the Draw Breath book, it's just the concept of drawing. And I'll explain a little bit more about the real inspiration behind that with meditation. So the more aware we can be of the thoughts we're having, the more likely we are to spot the thought as it's happening, rather than just allow it to fade. And the other thing is, when we realize that thoughts are something that's happening rather than something we're doing, we're way less attached to them. So we don't get as attached to our ideas. And that allows us to be a lot more creative, because one of the most important things, as somebody mentioned they were a writer in the chat, you've probably heard the expression to kill your darlings, right? The more we're protective of our ideas, the weaker they are, because we can't see new potential for them. So what's next? Let's just have a check of what's next. So the second point about why breathing allows us to even do this in the first place, and how it connects to creativity, is that the breath is not only present, but it's always changing. So if you are very, very studious, you could probably feel like the back of your right shoulder right now. You could probably just about feel that. Yeah, you can get a sense of it. But there's not much changing there. It's not much really to be aware of. Whereas the breath is in this constant state of change. It's in a constant state of what the Greeks, who we were talking about earlier, would call flux, and the Buddhists around the same time would have been calling impermanence. And so what we're going to do is another little study with our pencils. This is the second way of meditating with a pencil. And we are going to literally draw our breath. So this is really, really simple. What we're going to do is, we can even draw a little starting dot to make it feel special. So just drawing a little circle to start in. And how this works is, we're going to draw up as we breathe in and down as we breathe out. And we're going to go across the page, so you're going to end up with sine waves. But I'm just going to give you some tips. So the first one is to let the speed of your breathing guide your pen or pencil, because otherwise we do this. You're letting the pencil guide the breath. That's the big mistake that you can make with this. So what we want to do is, almost like we're artists and the breath is our subject, we want to aim to just listen to the breath, listen to the sensations, the feeling of the breath, and just translate that to the page, almost like our hand is being guided by the breath. And the best advice I can give you for this one is to have your pen inside of your little starting dot. And what we're going to do is, we're going to just watch 3 breaths without moving the pencil. And this is a bit like watching an escalator before you get on it. So you need to know what speed it is before you start moving. So just observe 3 breaths. And we're allowing the breath to be as natural as it can be. Not trying to change it in any way. When we reach the lowest point of that 3rd breath, just start to move the pencil in time with this next breath in. You can have your eyes open or closed for this. And the more wobbly and wibbly and imperfect your line, the more likely it is you're being true to your experience of your breath. It doesn't have to be perfect. And just making this the last breath that you draw, and then placing your pen down and paying the exact same amount of attention to this breath as though you're still drawing it. And just one more, just the same amount of attention, all the way from the beginning to the end. And it sounds incredibly simplistic, but that really is meditation, what you're doing there. When you stop drawing and you're still paying the same amount of attention, pay attention to the whole breath. And don't worry if you get distracted, just come back to the breath. That is meditation in a nutshell. And so the important bit here in terms of what we're discussing, which is creativity, is that not only are we training our attention, we're training our curiosity as well. Because if you can be curious about the experience of breathing, then you can be curious about just about anything. And this is where creativity gets supercharged. It's a bit like there's a rule for writers where you should be reading 90% or 9 times more than you're writing. Because what happens is the more curious we are, the more there is in our mind that we can be creative with. And one of my favorite analogies for creativity comes from a book which the name, I'm sorry, is going to escape me. You'll have to email me when I've remembered it. And he describes it like a kaleidoscope. So you look inside of a kaleidoscope and you turn it, and there's little pieces of glass inside there that are falling into different shapes. And so it's always this infinite capacity inside the kaleidoscope for something new and different to happen, even though it's always the same pieces of glass. And what we're doing when we're being curious is we're adding more pieces of glass into our kaleidoscope, our creative mind, that we can then twist and see new possibilities, new realms of possibility for us. And so this is probably a good point for me to show you the Draw Breath book, what it looks like inside. So let me just share my screen once more. So the Draw Breath, oh yeah, this I'll save that for the end actually after this bit. So the Draw Breath book is a book that invites you literally to draw your breath in the way that we've just been doing, and it has little creative tasks in there like what I call the moment map, which is that zigzagging thing we made together that maps where your thought process is, or rather where your awareness is. And inside it, there's lots of science, so don't be fooled by how simplistic these images are, but there's images that you trace in time with your breathing. So pink means inhale, blue means exhale, and we trace up on the pink lines as we're breathing in and down on the blue lines as we're breathing out. And there's hundreds of illustrations inside of the book with different animals and mandalas, and each is accompanied by some stories and some science that help you to understand the potential of your breathing to change your physiology, to change your psychology, and different philosophies from history around breathing and what it can do for us. And so that's why the book is called Draw Breath. It's an obvious play on words. So this seems like a new idea, and I certainly thought I'd had a brilliant idea and it was all me and I'm brilliant. That was obviously the ego there for about 10 seconds, because I realized that it's very similar to an ancient and wonderful concept that exists for a lot longer, which is this. So I'm wondering if anyone knows what these are called. Can anyone tell me in the chat? You probably recognize this kind of symbol from the front of books about Buddhism, or the front of health spa, and it comes from Zen, Jermaine, yes, but it has a name, and it's called the Enzo circle. And what's fascinating about this circle is that it's not that they don't know what it means, it's that it has a lot of different meanings depending on who's drawing it and which Zen school they come from, but it can represent the inside, the outside, the circle of rebirth. It can represent a whole lot, this idea of a circle. And the circle, the perfectness of the circle is irrelevant. What's important is that when the artist, when the monk draws it, they wait there with a loaded brush over the page, and they wait and wait for the spontaneous urge to draw the circle. And when they do it in time with their exhalation. So it's this perfect, spontaneous piece of art. And then the beauty of it is all the little imperfections around the circle that are created from the brush. And the reason that they do it that way, and the reason why it's connected to the breath, is because there's a focus inside of Zen arts on representing the spontaneity of nature. Not only that, but for the artist themselves to be part of the spontaneity. So it's not about being perfect and having this representing reality perfectly. If you look at those Zen paintings where they have a big long thing like this, and you'll have mountains in the distance, maybe a tiny little person in the front, and maybe some animals, and it looks like a perfect representation of nature from about 5 feet away. But when you go up close to it, you see that all the trees are really, it's the brush strokes that are spontaneous that make them look like trees. And actually that you can create art like that within a few strokes, or rather the masters who've been doing it for 50 years can. And so the Enzo is part of that. It's representing the spontaneity. It's the awaiting almost for the movement to happen of its own accord, and doing that in time with the breath, because they're acknowledging that the breath is something that we can be in control of, but most of the time it's spontaneous. So it's a really perfect apex. The breath is the perfect apex between acknowledging ourselves as part of nature and allowing it, and dominating and changing our nature by changing the breath. And this takes us on to really the core differences between meditation, mindfulness meditation in particular, and breath work. And that is that the instruction in mindfulness is always to not change the breath, to just be aware of your breathing. And that's okay, especially if you don't have dysfunctional breathing. But a lot of people do. It's something like 40% of us are sleeping with our mouths open, all these amazing stats that are coming out now, because we live in a modern world. We don't live in the world that the Buddhists were living in when they came up with Vipassana meditation. And so the core difference is the Vipassana instruction is just be aware of the breath. That's what Vipassana means, breath awareness. Don't change the breath. Whereas what we're invited to do in breath work, and we're inviting others to do when we're facilitating, is to change the breath. Mindfulness says pay attention to the breath. Breath work says we can use the breath to change the kind of attention we're paying. And that's a really fundamental difference, because most people, in my experience, don't stick to mindfulness. You know, how many people have been on a mindfulness course in my country anyway, of England, and are they meditating every day? Are they doing half an hour of meditation a day? No, they're not. And so what's happening? Why isn't it working? Why aren't they picking it up? It's because they're supposed to be training their attention, but they're not utilizing their breath in a way that allows them to pay attention. And that's where this third idea about the third reason breath is central to every major tradition around meditation is that the breath is connected to our emotions. And I'm using that word really broadly, because what I'm really saying is it's connected to our attention. It defines the kind of attention we can pay, the rhythm of the breath, the volume of our breath, where we're breathing into, changes the feelings in the body and how we relate to the world outside and the world of our own thoughts. Not only that, but it's changing how deeply we can feel into the body, which is something called interoception. If you're breathing very rapidly, you will increase the amount of feeling in the body. I know there's probably some conscious connected fans in here who know that when you breathe high volume and rapid, you're going to create a lot of sensation in the body. But when you breathe very, very slowly, especially at the resonance frequency, you're going to change the level, the balance in the nervous system, such that you trigger the vagus nerve, and there is a lot more awareness down into the body. And this is the real point I want you to go away with if you listen to one thing that I say today, and this is how I summarize it. Belly breathing connects you to gut feeling. So we've talked about how mindful awareness can connect us to or rather can hone our ability to pay attention, change our relationship to the thoughts we're having, make us less protective of the creative ideas that we're having by seeing them as something we're not even the owners of, and how it can actually train our curiosity to be curious, not only about the breath, but now that we're using the breath in a moment to enter a state that helps us to feel deep down into the body, we can sense into our intuition more deeply. And the reason I say belly breathing connects us to gut feeling is because if our ideas aren't coming from the muses, I believe they're probably coming from inside the body, right? They're coming from somewhere where we're connected to the feelings we're having about stuff. If we're living just in our minds, it's going to limit the kind of creative capacity that we have. And I believe that's why when you are relaxed in the bath, as we spoke about, in the shower, in bed, on a walk, that's when that idea hits you, because you're no longer in your mind, you're in your body. And so that's where your ideas are coming from, is the ventral vagus nerve connecting you to your body, all of these internal feelings, which connects you to your insight and your intuition, which is how you get inspiration. And so what I'm going to invite you to do, I'm just going to check the time and just see what I've got left to talk to you about, just see what we can fit in here. Yeah, what might be best here is, yeah, we can do one more little fun task, and then I will take you on the next phase of my breathing journey, and we'll do something experiential. Does that sound good? We'll do some nice breath work. People came for the breath work, right? I think. Yeah. Okay. We'll do some breath work. So we'll do one little experiential thing here, and I just want to go into this idea that breath connects you to your emotions and breath changes your emotions. So I'm going to invite you to take your pen or pencil that you've been using and place it into your mouth like this. I'm going to take mine out just because then I can talk to you about why we're doing this. So there's a study in the 80s where they got people to hold a pencil in their mouth like this and watch cartoons. And they had two groups, one who didn't have pencils in their mouths and watch the cartoons, and one who did. And I'd like you just to guess in the chat, which group do you think found the cartoons funnier? And you can take the pencil out of your mouth now. Was it group one with the no pencils or group two without the pencils? So Gladys says the ones with the pencils in the mouth. Yeah, with the pencils. Yeah, okay. Yeah, group two. Right. Why do you think that was? Why do you think they found it funnier? No idea. Okay. What am I doing right now? I'm going to mime the pencil in my mouth. Yeah, so Orlando's got it. You're already in a smiling state. So that's just two muscles on each side of the face that I'm using to make this expression. And yet it's capable of, that my body, just engaging those two muscles, is capable of changing my mind to the point where I perceive the world as funnier. So what we do with our bodies has the capacity to literally change how we perceive the world, which is as good as changing the world. It's literally the same thing. You experience the world differently. The world has changed. And that's just with these two muscles here. Now, breathing involves the diaphragm, which is a huge muscle, the intercostals and all these muscles around here. And not only that, but you have all of these sensors inside of your lungs, pressure sensors, and the baroreflex in the heart. All of this stuff that is sending information along the vagus nerve into the brainstem about how you feel, which changes how you see the world. So it's incredibly, incredibly powerful. And when we're in a positive state, we can be more creative. They've done loads of experiments where, and I love dogs, I'm a real dog person. If there's a dog in the room, we are better at creative problem solving because it affects us, they co-regulate us, and we feel good. And when we're in a vagal state, when our vagus nerve is switched on, when we're in a parasympathetic state, our bodies are better at releasing oxytocin, sometimes called the love hormone. It's the hormone that allows us to feel connected to other people, but it also helps us to see connections between things. So think about everything we've talked about is about connecting the dots between ideas that don't seem related and making that relationship for yourself. That's the creative insight. That's the idea happening. That's the solving the problem. And what we're going to do one more little experiment with ourselves. And I'm going to give you, you still have your pencils. We're going to do what's called a functional fixedness test. So I'd like you just to imagine for 1 minute, because that's all the time you're going to have. I'd like you to imagine as many different uses for your pen or your pencil, whichever one you've got, as you can imagine. So you can't draw with it. What can you do with it? So new uses. So if you're an alien coming to the world, what would you think it was for? If you were trapped on a desert island, what might you use it for? How could you use it around the house? And I'm going to give you 1 minute starting now to think of as many uses as you can. And I'm doing it with you, by the way. And you're only in competition with yourself. I'm not going to be making anyone share their results here. Okay, so stopping there, that's your 1 minute. And just making a mental note of how many answers you got. And if there's any particularly exciting or interesting ones, put them in the chat and see if anyone else had the same as you. Mine got a bit weird. I had pierce your ears, which I don't recommend. And a bridge for ants. So I think I was panicking at that point. I don't know where that one came from. So yeah, let me know. Did you have any weird ones yourself? Make a bun for your hair, Gladys. Great one. Actually quite practical. Turn off the TV, maybe, yeah, from a distance. Spread condiments and give yourself a scratch. Love it. Well done, Tanya. Scratch your back. Yeah, Gladys and Tanya, obviously, yeah, on the same wavelength there. So that test is called a functional fixedness test, and it's generally used in psychological assessments as a test of creativity. Now, don't worry if you only got 2 or 3, right? Because it's not about how creative you are. That's it, you're that creative. It's about how creative you are right now, right? So it's a way in psychological assessments, they would do that test, then they would give you the pill or make you do something, and then they'd test you again with something else, and they would see if you got more answers, and they usually do it with a brick. Susan, 14, wow, top of the class. A hurdle for a hamster, brilliant. I have never heard anything like it. Fantastic. Wonderful. Okay, brilliant. So you get where I'm going with this. The reason they use that to test your creativity is and the reason it's called a functional fixedness test is because one of the things that being creative involves is seeing an object or a concept, doesn't have to be a physical object, and seeing it past its intended use, its intended meaning, and into its potential. And really, this is at the core of the relationship between meditation and art. Because when we see past what we're supposed to see, or our limited labels that we're projecting out onto the world, we're opening up the doors of possibility. And this is how we teach people to draw. It's so similar. I'm just going to see if I've got these pictures in this presentation. I don't know if I have, but part of the Draw Breath book is about teaching you to draw, but using concepts from meditation. And so let me just see. I think I might have got a different presentation. Hang on. Do I have those images here? Okay, so I'll just show you one image that's kind of relevant to this. So in teaching people to draw and seeing past something, you know, when you're teaching someone to draw a dog or a cat, let's say, and there's a dog and a cat right in front of them, what they tend to do is go, okay, so there's the dog, and it's got kind of like little dog ears. It's got, oh yeah, it's got like its little dog nose. And it's got little eyes like that. And what they end up doing is looking, and they see the symbol, the ears or the nose or the eyes. They're seeing the symbol that they're projecting onto the dog, and then they translate the symbol to the page until you have something that looks like a dog, but it's not the dog that we're looking at. There's problems, and how you get someone around that when they're learning to draw is you can give them a couple of different ways of doing it, but one of them is to look past the object. So you actually say, I'm trying to teach them to draw this plant. What you ask them to do is to stop looking at the plant and see the negative space around the plant, and then you start drawing this, and what they have is they're essentially tracing the lines around the plant, and it gets them around that problem of seeing the symbol that they're projecting and not realizing that they're projecting, and putting it into the plant and putting it onto the page. So by seeing the negative space around something, you can do this. So this is really relevant to meditation, because what we're doing in meditation is noticing the thoughts that we're having rather than seeing the world through them. So that's probably where I'll stop talking about meditation and get more into breath work, because this is my real passion. So when I wrote this book, Draw Breath, which is available in all good bookshops, shameless plug there for the book. When I wrote that book, and I just want to show you that it's a lot more wordy. There's a lot more writing in it than probably you might think, based on it being a bit like a coloring book with all of the explanations and science. And the publisher was quite annoyed about that, because they wanted it to be something that would compete with coloring books. But being a bit of a nerd, I went out there and did all the research on breathing and what you could do to use your breath to change how well you could meditate. And while I was researching that book, I came across the concept of coherent breathing, which has become really popular in the last sort of 3 or 4 years since James Nestor's book came out. My book came out first. I'm just saying that no, he didn't really steal my idea, but he's made it really popular because his book, if you've read James Nestor's book, Breath, and if you haven't, you should. It's a really good book. You should probably buy it when you buy mine. You know, second, maybe read mine first, and then when you read that book, he pretty much summarizes. Okay, if you've read this whole book and you want to put something into practice, put into practice this idea of breathing at 5.5 breaths per minute, through in and out, gently through the nose and into the belly. That's pretty much his the bottom of his advice. If you distill that whole book down, and he even says that. And I was already on this journey writing my follow-up to Draw Breath, which is a book called Breathe in Harmony. And so Draw Breath is all about breathing and art, combining those two. And Breathe in Harmony is all about breathing in time with music, and specifically breathing in time with music at the resonance frequency, which is this, what James Nestor uses 5.5, but it can be anywhere from 4.5 to 6.5 breaths per minute. And so I'm going to show you some of this project that has just been launched, actually. And then I'd like to guide you in some music from the project. Does that sound good? Does that sound like fun? Okay, cool. Excellent. So I'll just share some. Oh, I've got the wrong thing open again now. Hang on 1 second. Let me just change that. So last year I went on a journey to research the book, and it took me to the Americas, to Mexico, to across America, and I met loads of amazing characters who had something to say about breathing, about specifically slow and rhythmic breathing, which is what we're going to have a go at shortly. So this is me at 3 a.m. in the morning in Manchester Airport, barely able to keep my eyes open, and terrible pictures of me as a theme for the next few minutes. I also went to Texas, where I met Stephen Elliott, who's the writer of a book called The New Science of Breath. And if you've tried to get into coherent breathing at all, or you've heard that phrase coherent breathing, he's the guy that came up with the phrase. So he's the one that called it coherent breathing. It's also called resonance frequency breathing. It's very, very similar. There's slight differences. But I really want to know, what is the potential of this? And Stephen, for example, believes that this is about hypertension. This is about blood pressure, that your diaphragm is essentially a second heart. Your heart pumps blood, but so does your diaphragm. And this is something that doctors, agree with, that venous return, so your blood has to travel around 10 feet. Obviously it goes slightly differently depending on the route it takes, about 10 feet from when it's pumped out of the heart to get back around to the heart, which is about the height of a basketball hoop. In fact, it's exactly the height of a basketball hoop. And so it really needs some help at the very end of its journey, and that's called venous return. It's the blood returning in the veins to the heart, because the veins don't push the blood. And we can do that with our diaphragm. By gently using the diaphragm and by using it rhythmically, we become more efficient at returning blood to the heart. And you can put a blood pressure cuff on somebody with high blood pressure, get them to breathe at 5 or 6 breaths per minute, and their blood pressure will come into a much healthier range within 2 or 3 minutes. It's fact. It's amazing. Not only that, but according to Stephen, because I've not tested this myself, but even if it's that they've got low blood pressure, it will raise it to a healthier range. And Stephen said to me, is there any drug that can do both? Is there any drug that is for high and low blood pressure? No. So why is it that coherent breathing does this? And it's because this is probably how we used to breathe before we were sitting down all the time, before we were completely in our heads all of the time. We were probably breathing much more fluidly, much more freely. And our blood was healthier accordingly. Cardiac disease is the biggest killer. And so anything that we can do to help improve our heart health, we should be doing. And then this is a lady called Terry Zucker. She was the first person to study resonant breathing in relation to trauma. So she took people who had complex PTSD trauma from, they were veterans, American veterans in Iraq, they'd come back from Iraq. And she got them breathing around their resonance frequency for 6 weeks, and it lowered their trauma scores. And I'll share a story about the project that I've just launched and how that's helped some people with trauma as well. And this is a lady called Alicia Murray, and she takes people who have 3 panic attacks a day, and over a 4-week period, she slows their breathing down incrementally from 13 breaths initially to 6 breaths per minute, and their panic attacks stop. It's like, name me drugs that do all this. It's just incredible. And then this guy is Dr. Jack Feldman. These are just the photos I had to hand. I've done about 50 interviews now with experts in this space. And Jack Feldman is a neuroscientist, and he discovered the part of the brain that regulates the breathing rhythm. It's called the pre-Botzinger complex. And he and his team have been training mice to do breath work. And he wouldn't tell me how he'd done it, because the study's not actually out yet. It's coming out later this year. And he's worried about people stealing how they taught the mice breath work. So I asked him, do they have a tiny yoga teacher mouse that stands at the front of the mouse cage and teaches them? And he didn't say that wasn't the case. So that's now in my imagination how he did it. And what they were doing slightly slower than resonance frequency. So it would be equivalent to about 4 breaths per minute if they were human. And then they exposed the mouse to a stressor, which is a red light that comes on. And mice that haven't done the breath work go, oh, and they have a panic response. And they stay like, and their heart rate's elevated for a good, 15 minutes after. Whereas the mice that have done the breath work, again for 4 weeks, go like this, that was weird. And they recover. And so this slow breathing technique is a game changer. It changes your levels of anxiety, it increases your resilience to stress, it increases your ability to recover from stress. And I haven't even talked about heart rate variability yet. So heart rate variability, and I'm not going to go into the full explanation now because I want to have time to give you a really nice long practice. Heart rate variability is your heart's ability to vary its rate. It's that simple. Your heart rate is changing with every breath that you take. We look at our Fitbit or our Apple Watch and it says, yep, your heart's beating at 60 beats per minute. And so we imagine our heart to be like a metronome, but it really isn't. Our heartbeat is changing not just over time, but in between each beat. So if your heart rate monitor is saying that your heart rate is 60 beats per minute, it's more likely that it's going boom, 58, boom, 59, boom, 62, boom, 60, boom, 58. And what's happening is whatever's measuring it is taking like 15 beats and averaging the speed. And so it's missing all of the juicy data in between the beats, which is a measure of your overall health. So the more your heart varies its rate between your beats, the healthier your nervous system, in particular your autonomic nervous system. And the healthier your autonomic nervous system, the better your body is at maintaining homeostasis. And the better your body is at maintaining homeostasis, the less stress there is on your heart, the less stress there is on your blood vessels, the more likely it is that you'll have healthy blood pressure, the more likely it is that you'll have all of your vital signs will be much healthier. I spoke to one cardiologist here in the UK called Dr. Alan Watkins, who's done a TED talk about this very thing. And he told me that if you breathe slowly and rhythmically for 15 minutes a day for 6 months, you can reverse the age-related decline of the heart by 10 years. And that's a really bold claim, but it's based in science. What he's saying is, if you breathe slowly and rhythmically, probably at your resonance frequency, for every day for 15 minutes a day, you're going to increase your heart rate variability to the point it was 10 years ago. So I'm 35, but I have the heart rate variability of a much younger man because I've been practicing this every day for about 4 years. And how this works in relation to your heart rate is, as I mentioned, your heart rate goes up when you breathe in, it increases, and it goes down when you breathe out. And that's because you're increasing the pressure around your heart. So as you breathe in, you actually create less pressure around the heart because there's more space because the lungs are now filled with air and your heart's denser than air. And so to account for the low pressure environment, your heart has to speed up. And then as you breathe out, that vacuum collapses. And so there's more pressure on your heart, and so it has to slow down because it doesn't need to have the same amount of pressure to pump the same amount of blood. And so when we breathe at 5 to 6 breaths per minute, we see the biggest amplitude, the biggest difference in heart rate. And I tell you what, I'm going to show you this live because if you haven't seen it before, the visual is much more easy to understand than me explaining it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play some music and an animation. In fact, the first thing I'm going to do, I'm just going to plug this in 1 second. So this is a photoplasmiograph, which is a very fancy way of saying it's a heart rate monitor. And it's going to go on my ear and it's going to measure my pulse based on how red my ear goes. So every time my heart beats, my ear gets a little bit redder. And every time in between the beat, it gets less red. And I'm just going to show you what we're seeing here. Let me see if I can. Yeah, okay. So just to show you this is a live reading, I'm just going to share my screen, and you can see that it's got my pulse here, and then it's showing my heart rate over here, my heart rate variability over here. And I'll come back to this in a second, but for now I'm just going to share a piece of music with you. And in this music, we're going to breathe in with the high notes. There's 4 high notes, and we're going to breathe out with the 4 low notes. And I've forgotten to share my music again, so bear with me. And so you can do this along with me. I'm just going to be following the music. So it's in to a count of 4, ding, 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 out to a count of 4, ding, 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 really easy. And I just recommend that you breathe in through your nose and out through your nose, and that you soften your belly as much as possible. So just let go of any tension in the belly to allow the belly to move with your in-breath. Breathing in with the higher notes, breathing out with the low notes. Okay. So just opening your eyes gently if they've been closed. I'm just going to share the readings with you from the heart rate monitor. And you can it's still live, it's still moving. I'm just going to pause it. And you can see where I've stopped my breathing here is just here. But what this is demonstrating is my heart rate. So down here you've got 60, up here you've got 160. It's the heart rate changing over time, and you can see that with each breath that I was taking, there's this huge change in my heart rate. As I breathe in, the heart rate escalates. As I breathe out, it decreases, breathing in and out. And every single time I'm breathing out, and it doesn't normally look like this, okay? So I have very high heart rate variability, which means it's a very clear reading here. But if I was just breathing at 12 breaths per minute, you wouldn't see these huge changes. But every time we have these huge changes, the heart rate is having to slow down. So it's coming up and it's having to slow back down. And it's doing it because of resonance in the cardiovascular system when we breathe at this speed. But the really key thing here is that every single time the heart has to apply the brakes like this, it gets better at doing that. And the exact same parts of your nervous system that control the down regulation of the heart, the slowing down of the heart, are the same parts that are involved in relaxation, in feeling safe, in feeling connected to other people, and creating a space of flow in the body. We're talking about the ventral branch of the vagus nerve. That is what slows your heart down. And you've probably heard of the vagus nerve. This is a way of doing press-ups with the vagus nerve. Each breath is a press-up for your ability to feel relaxed. And some of you might have slowed down your breath there and felt a little bit anxious. And that's okay too. It's about 10% of people feel a bit of anxiety when they do this the first time. And that's because of sensitivity to CO2. So if you're one of the lucky ones who didn't feel anxious and was actually starting to feel quite calm and annoyed that the music stopped, congratulations. If you're someone who is feeling a little bit anxious, having to slow your breath down that much, the good news is, if you do this every day just for 5 to 10 minutes, that will go away within 4 weeks. That's what I showed you there with Professor Alicia Murray. She was taking people with high anxiety, where the anxiety is actually caused by the sensitivity to CO2. If we breathe more, we breathe off more CO2, we lower the CO2 in the blood. And so when we breathe slower, if we're used to low levels of CO2 in the blood, bear in mind your CO2, presence of CO2 is what creates the feeling of air hunger, the feeling of suffocation. So if your threshold's quite low, it can induce anxiety, because the feeling of suffocation, if you hold your breath, is very similar to the feeling of anxiety. So I would just say, if you did feel a bit anxious there, don't see that as a reason to stop doing this practice ever again. I would say that's a real indicator that you have the most to gain from this practice. So the reason that I want to just tie that all together, the reason that this thing can affect trauma and heal people's PTSD, or at least lower the markers of PTSD, is that we are training that very part of the nervous system, the vagus nerve, to slow down the heart. In doing so, it gets stronger. And in doing so, we strengthen our ability to feel connected, to feel safe. Because if you are someone who's experienced trauma and you end up with a bias towards one of those safety states of fight or flight or freeze, your newest safety state, which is your ability to connect with other people, is diminished. But it can be healed with breathing and other things as well. But I think breathing is the foundation. So yeah, does anyone have any questions? Because I think it'd be really nice to do an extended practice now, if anyone fancies doing that with me. I'm just going to take this off my ear. So put some questions in the chat. In the meantime, I just want to tell you about this cool project that I've just done. So this was going to be an audiobook. It was going to be a written book, I'm sorry. And then I realized no one buys books with CDs in 2023, because no one has a CD player. So I realized I was going to have to find some other way of doing it. So I thought, okay, I'll do an audiobook, and it'll be a chapter of stories, and then a chapter of practice with the music, a chapter of stories, a chapter of practice. And what happened was my brother wrote that piano piece for me, and he wrote a number of other pieces of music for the book. And then I have lots of other musician friends, and they kept giving me music to add into the book. And I ended up with 173 different pieces of music to regulate your breathing at slow speeds. So there's very, very simple ones like the piano. And there's very, very complex ones, and we can try one of those maybe later, or shortly rather. And so what I did is I realized no one's going to buy a book that is this long, because all the tracks are 30 minutes, to allow you for deep state. So I've created an app, which I'll just show you if I've got any pictures of it in this presentation. Let's see. I've created an app that you can access the music through, and I'm doing a course on it right now. So I don't know if I actually have a video of the app. Oh, there we go. Okay. So yeah, the app is called Aria Breath, because aria, the word, means both song and air in Italian. And the app is filled with music libraries. It's been endorsed by James Nestor, Patrick McEwen, and Dr. Belisa Vranic. So I'm very honored to have their endorsements. And how it works is you can choose your breathing rate, and then there are just hundreds of tracks that you can listen to, so that you have endless choice of music to listen to that you can time your breathing rate, and there's animations in there to guide your breathing, with lots more to come. And there's loads of different styles of music, because we've had people from India, so some Bollywood musicians who've created some really cool tracks, a guy who usually does soundtracks for Hollywood movies, some guys who normally do stuff for Netflix, and you can literally swipe left and right through the tracks till you find your favorite and just hit the favorite button. Yeah, so I just wanted to show you guys that in case it's of interest. I'll come back to the chat now. And oh, Tanya, thank you. Tanya's just shared the link to that. I will just say that I did it as a crowd-funded project. So there was 300 places in the app, and I actually sold them all this Thursday, the last one went. But I thought, so it's not on the website now how to get the app, but I'm doing a 6-week course along with it, sharing all my research. And so if you did want to join that, I made the decision the other day when I thought I should have something special for the people who are joining on the IBF thing. If you would like to be a very last minute addition to the app, you are welcome to use this link, because it's not actually on the website anymore. So I'm just going to put it in the chat. But if you would like to join, I can add you today, and you could join the course tomorrow. So you'll have missed the first of the 6 sessions. But if you are going to do that, please do it today, because you'll have missed 2 sessions by next week. So it might not be as fun. And I'll leave that link in there, and I'll remind you at the end. We'll do a practice first, see if you actually enjoy it. Does that sound good? We'll just do like a 15-minute guided practice.
I don't mean to interrupt you, Tom, but there were questions above that.
Oh, sorry. Yes. Okay, cool. So Gladys asks, what's the difference between 5.5 and 6 breaths? David says, what was the practice? You had to leave. So the practice is resonance frequency breathing / coherent breathing, also called HRV breathing, also called HRV biofeedback breathing, depending on who's talking about it. And Gladys, the question, what's the difference between 5.5 and 6 breaths? So everyone's exact resonance frequency is very slightly different. So mine might be 5 breaths, yours might be 6 breaths. Some athletes might be as low as like 3.5 breaths. But for the vast majority of people, it's going to be between 5 and 6 breaths per minute. And my advice to people is, if you don't know your resonance frequency, to use 5.5 or 5 breaths per minute. So the general advice out there is 6 breaths per minute, and it's not based on anything. Whereas 5.5 or 5, you're going to get more hypercapnic benefits, which are the decreasing your sensitivity to CO2, and therefore decreasing the level of air hunger you feel, and therefore the level of anxiety. So hopefully that helps, Gladys. Yeah, so I would, if you don't know it, go a bit lower. Tom, is the class live? I'm in the US, the time difference is an issue. So yeah, Kristen, the class that's associated with I didn't really explain that very well. If you buy a membership to Aria Breath, included in the pre-launch memberships is a 6-week course, and some other cool stuff as well. And the class is Sundays. Let me figure this out. It's 6 till 8 p.m. UK time, which is BST, which I believe is 12 p.m. ET, Kristen. Or it might be 1 p.m. actually. Yeah, I think it's 1 till 3 p.m. ET. But it is, I send out the recording within 24 hours. If you can't make it on the Sundays. Okay, cool. All right, I'm going to go ahead and guide you in a practice now, because wouldn't that be lovely? So we're going to do some shaking and tapping, which I've taken from Gerbach and Brown, if you've heard of them. They wrote a beautiful book called The Healing Power of Breath, and they took it from Qigong. So we're going to do some very simple shake. Actually, no, we can't do that because I can't use the music because it's rights managed. And this is going on YouTube, I believe. So what we'll do is, what should we do instead? We'll just do some very light Qigong movements, just to relate our breathing to the movement of our bodies. So I'm going to invite you to stand just for a little moment while we do some very gentle movements. We've all been sat down for a while, so yeah, let's just have a little shake, just a natural shake. Give your feet a shake as well. Give your shoulders a shake, and you can keep your arms loose, just shaking up the body. And you can have your camera on or off. Make some noise as well. You've had to be quiet while I've been yammering away, so. Okay, and we're just going to do some very gentle twists as well, just to warm up and create some space in the spine. So I'm just keeping my arms completely relaxed and just swaying my shoulders from left to right in a way that allows my arms to tap the sides of my body. And just let your breathing be free, natural. And then come to stillness. And just notice how the body's feeling. Just acknowledge how the body's feeling. Just sensing into the feeling of your feet on the floor. The support that they're giving you. Just allowing for a very slight bend in the knees. And just seeing if that tiny bend in the knees allows you to tilt the hips a little bit more in a way that allows you to make space for your belly. So just that tiny bend in the knees can create a lot of space for the breath. Just explore that space, breathing down into the belly, softening the belly as much as you can. And then just imagining that there's a string coming from the top of your head, keeping the bend in the knees, but as you breathe in, the string's just pulling you gently up. As you breathe out, you can almost rest your weight on the string, softening the shoulders, softening the back, but just seeing if that string pulling up and the bend in the knees can create space for the breath. We're just going to do some very flowing, gentle Qigong movements. And so what I'd like you to do is, it's almost like you're dancing with a partner, but your partner here is your breath. And we're going to breathe in and just follow my movements. Don't overthink it. Breathe in, coming to the right, and then breathe out, coming to the left. And you can imagine that the arm that's higher up is moving clouds. And the fingertips of this hand that's on the arm below are just gliding over water. So you're waving through clouds, you're gliding over water. And just tie the movement to the breath in whatever way feels right. We're not trying to breathe at any particular speed. We're just letting the movement and the breath flow together. Just see what's it like to go a little bit further. We're not straining at all here, but just exploring the range of motion. And whenever feels right for you, just coming to stillness. You might be noticing some warmth in the arms after that. Just coming back to that place of a slight bend in the knees. And raising the energy with each in-breath. Creating space at the top of the body as well. And we're just going to tie our movement to our breath again, but this time it's really simple movement. We're just going to raise the arms up above the head as we breathe in. And my arms are like this above my head. And hold, and then bring the palms together like this, the hands together, I should say, as we breathe out. And then we hold at the bottom. And I'm going to count us. So we're breathing in to count 4, in 2, 3, 4. Hold 2, 3, 4. Out 2, 3, 4. Hold 2, 3, 4. In 2, 3, 4. Hold. And we're just doing box breathing here, but we're tying it to movement. Out 2, 3, 4. Hold 2, 3, 4. In 2, 3, 4. Hold 2, 3, 4. Out 2, 3, 4. Hold 2, 3, 4. Last one. In 2, 3, 4. Hold 2, 3, 4. Out 2, 3, 4. Hold 2, 3, and just breathing naturally, noticing how the body feels. Noticing how the breath feels. And we've got a nice amount of time here to do a guided practice now. So what I'm going to invite you to do is find whatever you need to be comfortable for the next 20 minutes. So you can do this seated. You can also do it lying down. I recommend doing it lying down if that's available to you in the space that you're in right now. So you might want to grab a pillow or a cushion. Even if you're seated, you might just need something behind you on the chair just to support your back. If you're seated, you might want to just make sure that your feet can be flat on the ground. And if you're lying down, you might want to have something underneath your knees, just to take the pressure off your lower back. And as we do this practice, we're going to enter into the rest and digest response. And when that happens, our blood moves to our vital organs and starts absorbing nutrients from our food. And one thing that can happen is the extremities can get a little cold. So it can be nice just to have a jumper or a blanket or a cardigan beside you, just for easy access if you do get cold. And just a reminder that this can cause anxiety for about 1 in 10 people. But I promise you, even if you stick with it for about 10 minutes, that anxiety will dissipate and make way for something else. And that something else is really worth the wait. It's a nice, deep level of relaxation. Because it just takes a little while for our nervous system to feel the full effects of this breathing. And so just giving yourself space to get that 1% or 2% more comfortable, whether it's giving yourself a little wriggle, letting the body settle. Maybe shifting your weight a little bit. And it's okay to move throughout this meditation. This is not a staying still kind of meditation. We can just wriggle. We can open our eyes if we need to. It's not the same as mindfulness meditation, because what we're doing is breathing to affect the nervous system fundamentally. And so just becoming aware of your breath now. What sensations tell you that you're still breathing? Maybe air in the nose, cool air coming in. Warm air going out. And notice how the breath is moving the body. Where's the body moving with the breath? Maybe in the belly. Breathing in, it rises. Breathing out, it falls. I'm just going to invite you to notice that even just in becoming aware of our breath, it naturally slows down. Even here where we're not changing the breath, just bring our awareness to it. It naturally slows down. That suggests to me that this is our body's natural state, and a slower, more rhythmic breathing. And just notice as well that as you breathe out, it's a letting go. It's a letting go of any tension in the belly. And with that letting go, with each out breath, there's a wave of relaxation through the body. Even if we can only just barely feel it, just tuning in to that soft wave of the out breath through the body. And we're going to ride that wave a few times, just deliberately letting go. So as you breathe out, softening the muscles around the eyes. Softening the eyebrows and the forehead. Softening the tongue and the mouth. Noticing that as we soften the tongue, the cheeks and the jaw naturally soften. Neck and shoulders softening. And with this breath out, letting the fingertips soften completely. Arms, hips, legs, ankles, feet, toes, whole body softening with this breath out. Feeling the whole body soften a little more with each breath out. And in a moment, you're going to begin to hear the music. And I'll guide your breathing. We'll count to begin. And then you'll breathe with the music as it rises, breathing in. as it falls, breathing out. And we'll take our time to settle. But first, we'll take 3 breaths together just to synchronize our breathing. Breathing in through the nose. Sighing out through the mouth. In through the nose. Sighing out through the mouth. Last one. Now breathing in and out through the nose only. Breathing in, 2, 3, 4, out, 2, 3, 4, in, 2, 3, 4, out, 2, 3, 4, in, 2, 3, 4, out, 2, 3, 4. And in a moment you'll begin to hear the music. We'll be breathing in with the higher levels, out with the lower. Breathing in, 2, 3, 4, out, 2, 3, 4, in, 2, 3, 4, out, 2, 3, 4, in, 2, 3, 4, out, 2, 3, 4. Out, 2, 3, 4. In, 2, 3, 4. Out, 2, 3, 4. Breathing in. Breathing out. Breathing in. Breathing out. In, 2, 3, 4. Out, 2, 3, 4. Breathing in softly. Breathing out gently. Breathing in, feeling the belly rise. Breathing out, feeling the belly fall. Breathing in, this will feel more and more natural. Breathing out as you get used to the rhythm. Feeling the belly rise, feeling the belly fall. Breathing in gently through the nose. Breathing out gently through the nose. Letting the air slide in and out like waves lapping the shore. In, 2, 3, 4, out, 2, 3, 4, in, out, softening the body as you breathe out. Softening the eyes and eyebrows. Breathing out, softening the jaw, the cheeks, tongue. Breathing in, breathing out, softening the shoulders completely. Breathing in, out, letting the fingers, palms and wrists soften. Breathing in, imagining the whole body expanding. Breathing out, imagining the whole body softening. It's very natural as this practice goes on to take less and less air as your body comes into balance. Moving almost no air, but still breathing into the belly. Feeling the belly expand. Feeling the belly relax. Imagining the whole body expands. Each new breath in, creating space. In, 2, 3, 4, out, 2, 3, 4. Feeling how smooth and effortless you can make this breath. Almost as though the body is being breathed. In, 2, 3, 4, out, 2, 3, 4. And as the music gently begins to fade, keeping the eyes closed, allowing the breath to find its own rhythm. And just resting here, allowing the natural breath. And noticing how the body feels, having completed this practice. Scanning through the whole body, noticing just how much sensation is available now. From the tips of your toes to the tips of your fingers, even in stillness, the body is alive with sensation. Maybe even feeling the beat of your heart. And very gradually bringing movement into your fingertips and your toes. There's no rush to get up. The session is coming to an end, So you can just stay here if you're lying down and enjoying it. Or if you'd like to begin gently rolling onto your side, taking your time, knowing that the benefits of this practice will be with you for the next 24 hours at least. You just set a course in your nervous system for deeper resilience, for deeper calm, and for more conscious choices. So if you're ready, opening your eyes. Just letting in the room. And just know that any positive sensations, any sensations of calm that you're feeling now are available to you by your own hand, or rather breath. Just by breathing slowly and rhythmically, we have this compounding effect on our feelings of relaxation, and with that, our ability to relax. And you may have felt your heartbeat at the end of that practice. That means your interoceptive capacity has improved. It's not that your heartbeat got any stronger, it's your ability to listen to it, ability to feel it was improved. And so that means that we're opening up those channels of perception into the body that connect us to our intuition, to our insight, and to our inspiration. It's all happening in the body. So my recommendation is to now go and do something creative and see how it feels. Whether you feel more resourced, whether you feel more in tune, whether you feel more in flow. And so thank you so much for joining me. I don't know if Robin or Tanya or Orlando wants to come and say hi. I'd just like to remind you guys, if anyone really enjoyed that and you want to come and do it with me every Sunday for the next 5 Sundays, please do check out the link that I put in the chat, and you're very welcome to join that. And it includes obviously the lifetime membership to the app with all of the music. So 173 different tracks at launch with lots more. So Ben says, this was brilliant, Tom. I learned so much from you today and really respect your work. I'm certified with Soma Breath and Heart Math and plan to incorporate what I learned today into my practice. Also planning to sign up for the pre-launch and get your book. Oh, thank you. Hey, thank you for saying my HRV tracing is impressive. Ben, if you're hoping to use the music with your clients as well, there's a licensee program that's coming in June, and that allows you to use all the music with your clients. It's gonna be really fun. So I strongly recommend that you join the founder program now, because that licensee program is cheaper for founder members. So thank you for those lovely comments, Ben. And thank you for all the other lovely comments in the chat. Kristen, Carolyn, Marilla, Mylene, Will, thank you. So Will asks, why do you use the 4 count and not a 5 count? It's purely, Will, because it just has a better rhythm. So whether I'm counting people at 6 breaths per minute or 5 breaths per minute, I just use a 4 count because it's more intuitive. And also it's a slower count. So if I'm counting to 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, there's a slower beat than if I'm going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in the same amount of time. And when we speak more slowly, it actually has an effect on other people who are listening to us, where it slows down their brainwaves. And we're hoping to, one of the things that I didn't get into today is how this affects the brain. And we create asynchronous brain waves and we breathe like this. Very cool stuff. So I'm hoping not to disrupt that too much by talking too fast, by counting too fast. So hopefully that explains it well. And yes, and thank you very much to IVF. Thank you, Ben, for reminding me. Yes, thank you so much to Tanya Orlando and to Robin for inviting me. I've very much enjoyed spending my Saturday afternoon with you guys.
Thank you, Tom. This was great. We are so appreciative of it. And this will be on YouTube on our IBF channel. So if anyone wants to re-watch this, it will be there at some point in time. We'll see. Robin's in charge of that.
Cool. And yeah, and just to say as well, if even if you're not going to join the founder program, if you want to practice with the music, if you sign up on the website, you get what's called a free starter pack, and that has an MP3 you can download, which has the piano music in it. So yeah, there's a freebie there if you're not able to afford the founder membership right now. So yeah, I guess that's it, guys. I guess I clock off. Robin, is that it? I just say goodbye now. All right. Well, thank you, guys. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much, Tom. I'm stopping the recording now.